Hi everyone, we are ready for our read aloud for lesson 2 in our ancient Roman civilization unit. So a question that you could answer from reading chapter 2 is, what does the legend of Romulus and Remus explain? It explains how the city of Rome got started, doesn't it? In today's reading, you learned that the Tiber River was an important part of the legend. And today's read aloud is another more detailed version of the legend of Romulus and Remus. So listen carefully for new information or details that you learn in this version. And you're going to make notes in the activity book, page 2.2. That looks like this, and you can see it there on the page as well. You are going to be filling in this page, this column, to add to the information that we already know. And the information that we already know is, we know who the characters are: Romulus, Remus, there was a servant, the king of Latium, and She-Wolf, okay? So we know all about those characters. So you're going to add any information that you learn about any of those characters in the read aloud. The setting, we learned about the time and the place. It's in Rome when the city got started, and it's near the Tiber River in Rome. So again, in this blank box, you're going to fill in any extra information you find about the setting. The theme or the lesson: you should not let competition get the best of you. That is what happened with the boys. They started to fight, and one of them ended up dead, according to the legend. So any information, new information that you learn about the theme. On the back of the page, it tells us about the plot, the sequence of events of the story of the legend. So the king of Latium told a servant to drown the twins. The servant put the boys in a basket and set it down in the river. A she-wolf found them and took care of them. Romulus and Remus decided to create a city. They fought about where to build it. Remus died. Romulus built Rome and named it after himself. So those are the things we already know. What you're going to do as I'm reading is you're going to add information that you learn from listening, and then you're going to submit it on Schoology. So here we go. Early on a chilly spring morning, a man picked his way through the tall grass along a bank of the river Tiber. In his arms, he carried a large basket in which 2 infant brothers were bundled up in blankets. From the basket, the 2 infants could see the blue sky dotted with puffy clouds. They could hear the birds singing from perches in the trees, and they could hear the rushing river Tiber, which at the time was full to the brim with the melted snow of the northern mountains. So how is this first event similar to or different from what we heard in the reader? Well, it's different because in the reader in chapter 2, it started out with King Latium telling the servant to drown the twins, right? Here we're starting out with a man walking through the tall grass with the 2 infant brothers. So you can add anything you want to in the plot section of your chart on page 2.2. The twins were too young to understand that the man carrying them was a servant of their wicked uncle King Amulius. Out of jealousy, or perhaps out of fear that one day the handsome twins would become too powerful and try to take his crown, the king had sent his servant to kill the baby boys. But the servant was a good man. He had a wife and 2 children of his own. With one look into those boys' eyes, the servant knew that he could never bring himself to kill them. The servant sat there in the grass on the riverbank all morning, thinking about what he should do and knowing that the king would kill him if he ever discovered that he had failed to do what he asked of him. Suddenly, above the sound of the rushing river, the servant heard a number of men on horses nearby. peering through the weeds, he saw some of the king's soldiers. Perhaps they were just out on a routine patrol, or perhaps the king had sent them to make sure the dark deed had been done. Either way, the soldiers would think it strange to find a man there with 2 babies in a basket, so the servant wasn't going to take any chances. Seeing no alternative, he placed the basket, babies and all, into the rushing waters of the river Tiber. He watched as they floated and bobbed slowly along the bank of the river. But a moment later, the basket was caught in the river current, and away it went, rocking and reeling out of sight downriver. The soldiers thought nothing of the man they saw standing there on the bank. They nodded and said, "Good morning." The servant waved back and acted as though he was just undressing to take a morning bath. Little did they know how his heart raced because he had defied the king's orders. But he had also saved 2 young lives, and for that he felt happy. So we can add to the third event on what we've learned section on your chart. So the third section, a she-wolf found them and took care of them, or the servant put the boys in a basket and set it down in the river. So you can add something to that if you want to, add some details. The twins remained calm and rather content as they floated downriver. Water splashed on them and soaked them, but thankfully the basket did not sink. Eventually, the basket wound its way into some tall, strong reeds, and there it sat. Some say it was the river god, Tiberinus, who must have protected and saved them, cradling their basket boat in his watery hand and gently guiding them to shore where they fell asleep in the shade. It so happened that a she-wolf was having a drink of water there at the river. She saw the basket and its precious cargo. The she-wolf had a tender heart and took pity on them. So there you could add on the where it says the she-wolf found them, you could also add that the river god Tiberinus saved them. The she-wolf dragged the basket to her den, and when the boys awoke, she fed them the same milk she fed her puppies. The twins remained in the den for a few days until finally the wolf saw a shepherd leading his flock of sheep down to the river. When the shepherd saw the she-wolf, he instinctively held up his staff to warn the wolf that he was ready to fight to save his sheep. But the wolf was not interested in his sheep on this day. Instead, she dragged the basket closer to the shepherd and then darted away. Puzzled, the shepherd went up to the basket, saw the handsome baby boys, and decided to take them home. What does this legend have to do with Rome, you ask? Well, these twin brothers were named Romulus and Remus, and they became quite famous. They were raised by the shepherd, and they grew up to be shepherds themselves. When the boys grew older, they decided to find their home. When they found out that King Amulius had tried to have them killed, they got their revenge by fighting and overthrowing him. I think that's something different than what was in the reader. I don't think we had that information in the reader, so you could write that down near where Romulus and Remus decided to create a city. That's an added plot point. Okay. The legend of Romulus and Remus was very important to the ancient Romans and later to the history of the country of Italy. The fact that the she-wolf did not try to harm the boys, but instead saved them and took care of them like her own pups, is a favorite part of the story. Ancient Romans decorated some of their buildings with statues and other types of artwork depicting this famous she-wolf and the twin brothers. At the time of Romulus and Remus, about 753 BCE, before Common Era, the area that is now Italy was broken up into lots of little kingdoms, with lots of kings who were constantly bickering or fighting with one another. Romulus and Remus had enough of those other kings, so they set off with some friends to build their own city near the river Tiber, where they had once been rescued by the she-wolf. Can you guess what that city was named? Perhaps it could have been named Rheims after Remus, but that's not how the story goes. Instead, it was named Rome after Romulus. What happened to Remus? Well, Remus and Romulus could not agree on where exactly to build their new city. They agreed that they needed to build it on a hill. There are 7 large hills in the area that is now Rome. Remus wanted to build the city on one hill, but Romulus wanted to build it on another hill. They bickered for a while and then decided to ask the gods for help. Each brother went to his preferred hilltop and waited for a sign from the gods. Late in the afternoon, Remus finally got his sign. 6 big vultures flew in a circle above his head. Surely, thought Remus, the gods have sent these birds as a sign that we should build our city here. You could add that to the characters, or you could add that to the plot on your activity book, page 2.2. A few minutes later, Romulus saw not 6 but 12 vultures flying overhead as he waited on his chosen hilltop. Unfortunately, this in no way settled the argument. Remus believed the gods had chosen his hill because they had sent the birds to him first. Romulus had seen more birds and therefore believed the signs were in his favor. The brothers could not agree, so they went their separate ways to see who could build the best city. A few weeks later, Remus came to visit his brother Romulus. Romulus had been working hard all day and night with his friends to build his city into a strong fortress with tall walls. However, it takes a long time to build strong walls. Remus laughed as he stepped easily over the wall Romulus had started to build. Well, it seems I've found a way into your grand city after all. That wasn't so difficult, Remus jeered, kicking a stone off the wall. This made Romulus very angry, and they started to fight. Forgetting they were brothers in those moments, they fought with all their might. After some time, Remus fell to the ground and died. When Romulus realized what he had done, he cried because he did not intend to kill his brother. This is the legend of how the great city of Rome was founded. This legend, as sad as it may seem, is what many ancient Roman children may have been told as they were being tucked into bed at night. And this legend is still being told today in its various forms. So you could go ahead and add some details to the brothers fighting if you want to. The story's end had an important message for the Roman people. Romans will protect their beloved city of Rome. For protection, the Romans surrounded themselves with strong walls, not just in Rome, but everywhere they settled. This picture was taken in present-day England, hundreds of miles from the city of Rome. Here you can see the ruins of Hadrian's Wall, a large wall built by Romans to guard against invaders from the north. Romulus's beloved city would become the capital of a very powerful empire. You will hear much more about this memorable city and empire over the next few days. So go ahead and add anything final that you'd like to add to page 2, activity book 2.2 on pages 15 and 16 and submit those pages on Schoology. Do not worry about the second part of 2.2. This page, you are not doing this right now, so don't worry about that.